yeah, I guess, yeah. I don't know who I am, Bo. There you go.
Right, so let's find out who Clint Rowlings is. We're going to roll straight into this chat, which we're not going to struggle for chat. Me and Clint haven't stopped speaking from the minute we met. I know Clint through the show favourite, Tim Reed. He's one of the coaches at RPG Coaching. I met him at Port Macquarie Ironman and have been pestering his DMs for a long time after. We spoke at Port, we spoke again at Cairns. He shares insight and chat about coaching and gave me a little bit of advice about local courses, and I was forever grateful of how much of an open book he was. And I figured, given Bottle.It's relationship with mental health and how important coaches or role models are in our life, that I'd sit down and have a quick yak with Clint and find out more about what he is, what's going on, who he is, and just basically get to know Clint Rowlings. He's I'm going to run through these. Ironman Australia age group champ, Ironman 70.3 top 10 overall placings. Is that right? That just reads wrong. That's on your website. No, that's right. And you've represented Australia in the Ironman World Championships in Hawaii 2018 and 2019.
Yes,
that's
sir.
That's all I've read off your website, mate. I don't want to.
That's all you need to know, mate.
That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
That's your link page. Clint Rowlings, how are you this morning, mate? What's going on?
Plenty, mate. Plenty. We're kind of getting a ball rolling with the racing in Australia is going to be kicking off pretty soon at Sunny Coast, and then it's, as you know, it's like one after the other through till probably June next year, mate, to be honest.
Finish up at Cairns.
Yeah.
So that's is there any off season for coaching? Do you have off season, or are you just on the whole time?
Depending on where your athletes are, right? Like Australia, there is, June till say September, you get a bit of a break, but mate, we've got people in, like I've got athletes in Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, and it's kind of, there's races all over the world now. And so like people are choosing, like I looked at one the other day in Alaska, like it's kind of, there's races all year round. So no, there's no off season, much to the disgust of my wife.
I was about to say, mate, I think my wife knows more than me how many races are coming up and how far they're spaced apart, because for me, it just seems like Christmas. It's like, oh, mate, there's another one in a month. And she's like, yeah, great.
It'll wear off, though. Trust me.
It'll wear off. Awesome. I can't wait. I might move on to the next sport then. Mate, how did you go from, if you've represented Australia as recently as 2019, it's now 2022. How did you, are you still racing? Have you hung up the bike and the shoes, mate?
Certainly not. I certainly haven't hung up the, hang up the Lycra. But, mate, the motivation certainly dropped especially over the COVID period, right? Like before the COVID period, I was coaching a bit, but not full time. Like I was still running my own business and coaching as well. And I kind of was still racing a lot then. And Reedy and I had just been to, I think it was 2018, we went to China for a race together. And it kind of kicked off a bit then with the coaching. And we chatted about it. And then it kind of, I raced until the start of COVID, and I still want to and still will. But at the moment, like I get so much joy out of putting my time into others. And it just seems like we just said, like race after race, because we've got a lot of athletes racing at the moment, it's kind of, I always say to them, like, and you get this question from people you coach, like, are you going to do some races? And like, I feel like you can't coach and race the same race. Like you can't turn up to a race and race and coach unless they're like, so for Sunny Coast example, like we've got a heap of athletes there. I'm not racing. Reedy's potentially going to race, and that's fine because I'm there to help out where possible. But I don't think on your own, I don't think you can race and coach, well, be the help you need to be on race day. So, mate, yet again, looking at somewhere like Ironman Alaska, odds are that I probably won't have someone doing a race like that. So maybe the plan is to race next year, mate. But at the moment, I'm super content helping others.
What have you learnt from coaching that you didn't know as an athlete? Is there anybody, have you sitting on the other side of the fence and watching so many athletes go around, are there some things that you've noticed that you didn't notice when you were so close to the elephant as a reference?
I'd say that.
Can we just
One of the
clarify to everyone, when me and you usually speak, it's not this. Like, this is probably the most civil conversation we've had in the whole time we've known each other. And we've got very deep and very professional, very quick. So just going to, just going to let everyone at home know.
We'll come back. We'll come back later, mate.
We'll come back.
We'll drop it to the gutter a bit later. Mate, what have I learned from coaching as opposed to racing? Like people deal with emotions differently, right? Like I don't stress too much. I never stress too much. I'd get quiet and get real like analytical before races, like, and really run through the whole process in my head. But I certainly wasn't like, I don't feel like I'm overly nervous and I guess hard to be around. Whereas some people, like some of the athletes you coach, you'll have great conversations with them for months and months and months up to races. And it kind of sometimes drops off before races. And at the start, I was like I almost felt like I was doing a bad job because they weren't, you give them information and you get one word responses, or, yeah, I'm good. Like, you'd say, hey, you feeling? Is there anything you need? And it's just like, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, oh, like maybe they're not. Maybe I haven't been helpful enough. But in the end, you probably realize that you're almost being too helpful. And that only comes from afterwards. They're just like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're so helpful. But like, I was just really nervous before it. And I couldn't talk too much because it made me more nervous. So I guess you learn that everyone deals with the emotions pre-race a lot differently.
Yeah, that's a cool little insight. It's cool that you're so calm and relaxed. I am. Yeah, there was definitely a range of, I've only done one, and the range of emotions on the start line of that boat ramp at Macquarie was definitely an interesting crowd.
It's even like the month before, right? Like a month out, you start going, wow, we're a month out. Like that's pretty close. And then 3 weeks out, you're like, oh, this is like, I haven't done enough. Like, I should probably push this session a bit harder. Like, I really don't feel like I'm running that well. Maybe I should run hard, or like you do that. And then like maybe a week out, you just go, it's done.
It's done.
Oh, there's nothing I can do now. Anything I do more now is gonna roll my day. So let's go do the best we can.
Yeah.
And get it done.
That's cool in itself, mate. Let's talk about your age group win, the champion. Was that done at Port Macquarie?
Yeah. Two ports ago.
2 ports ago. I'm fully showing my Iron Man hand here with knowing absolutely zero.
Mate, it's hard to say because we've had so many races cancelled and semi-run or whatever. But yeah, it was not the one just gone, the time before. Yeah, that was 2019. I guess.
CJ Worth won as the pro,
I think. Yeah, and Reedy was second.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim. First kidney shot of the day,
mate. Run us through that. Run us through your relationship with Port. Was that your biggest achievement? Was that up there for you?
Yeah, I'd say obvious. Like, I know it's an obvious statement. In terms of like, mate, you never go, and it's something that you always say to people that you coach. Like, it's always a process, right? Like getting to a start line, and the process might start. Like for you, it started years before, right? And it was, and you can look back on it and go, well, that's where it really started. Where like the more Ironmans you do, the more kind of you become comfortable with the process of like, I know that 16 weeks out. Well, I know for Ironman Australia at Christmas time, I've got to be fat. I've got to be fat. I've got to be like not happy with where I'm at. Athletically, because one, you want to have that Christmas period of like just letting loose and eating at barbecues and seeing all your friends and all that, and then it's like as soon as the gear kicks off, it's go time.
Yep.
And it was the same, like it's the same process every year. I've done Port, we kind of do the same process where it's like you do, like say January 2nd or whatever, we'd be away camping. It's like, all right, it's go time. We come home, it's go time. I had 4 weeks every year before Hell of the West out at Goondiwindi.
Yep.
And it was like, cram in some training as much as you can, like of whatever you can fit in. It doesn't have to be structured or anything. It's like just cram in some work, and then you go and do that race out there, and it is horrible every time. It's like, it's half the distance, and I'm slower over that than I would be at Port. But that's day one of Port Ironman training.
Yeah, that's cool.
And
That's
then
a cool
you just
little
go
plug
through
for
the
that event too.
Well, that's a really cool event, that one out there. It's like a local event with the town runs it, and it's really, really awesome. But mate, we like the same thing happens every year where you kind of, it's a process. You get to the start line, you just want to do as well as you can, right? And I think the year before I was fourth in my age, and I think I went 15 minutes quicker than the year before. And so you start to, and then went to Hawaii and went quicker again. So I was like, I was on the right trajectory, and I was like, all right, well, I think I can go better at Port Macquarie. And I never, ever, it was probably the first time actually that I never turned up and looked at a start line and looked at other people's names on there and go, oh, well, Bo's on the list. I know he's quicker than me, so I won't beat him. It was like, I turned up and it was just, let's do this as well as we can. And I knew loosely what I thought I could do based on numbers in terms of what I could ride power, what I could run, what I was swimming and training, and let's just see what happens. And it wasn't until probably halfway through the run, you're getting some of your mates, and yeah, this is why Port's such a good course, right? You've just got 4 loops of just getting abused by all your mates.
Yep.
But some of your mates some of my mates going, look, you're doing really well. You're going very, like, you're running as well as everyone in your age. Just keep doing it. And then you come around another corner and just get every profanity under the sun screamed at you. And it was one of my mates, Hayden, who was there, he's just like, the dude in second is chewing time out of you. What are you doing? Pull your finger out. And I was like, what? And then he finally said that I was just going through, as you know, you go through dark patches, went through a bit of a ordinary patch and out the other side. And yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I think I went 9, maybe 9:12.
Yeah.
And yet again,
did you know, were those guys giving you actual numbers, or you just knew you were in the front, so you were just
towards the end, like the guys who actually care about your feelings were saying, like, you're 3 minutes up. And then I worked out who it was, because I mean, mate, when you've done the same race kind of circuit around Australia for a fair few years, you know the guys who are decent, you know the guys who are in your age, because like a lot of them you're mates with, or like your acquaintances with. Some they might be a little bit of a different person to you and you don't get along with them that well, but others, like
in the triathlon community, no, we're all family, mate.
Mate, it's I guess that's probably somewhere, like, I love seeing other people do well, but in a situation like that, you're like, yeah, of course you want to win.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
I'm surprised that the Strava, maybe you can touch on this, the Strava followers you get in the lead up to once that athlete list comes out.
Mate, it's yet again something with coaching, when people are talking about other athletes and stuff like that, it's like, you've got to think about it as like, you've just got to do the best you can do, right?
Yeah. It's the only sport where, like, they're not going to affect your race. There's zero they can do to affect your race or performance.
Mate, if someone comes past you at 30K into a marathon and they're running 10 seconds a K quicker than you, you're not just going to go, oh, that's him there, I'm just going to run with him.
Yeah.
All right, you're doing as well as you can with what you've got at the time. So like, yeah, it's certainly not worth worrying about others. It's kind of, you just do it as well as you can. And that's what happened that day. I kind of went there and did it as well as I could.
That was enough.
And yeah, it was good. It was enough. And look at, yet again, what we're talking about before we started recording with, you look back and, like, I think I ran a 3:06 maybe, or something like that. And I look at that now and I was like, afterwards, I was like happy with it, but not stoked. I look back on it now and like, well, if I can get back close to that, I'll be stoked.
I'd take that every day of the week.
Yeah, like you kind of, you're just analytical on your performance for all the wrong reasons sometimes.
Were you coach for that, mate, or you self-coach? Who did you use who was in your corner when you went up for that race?
Mate, my old man, like has been a coach for, I'd say, maybe close to 20 years now.
Yep.
And so I always kind of, not directly, he didn't coach me, but we would just sit there and talk triathlon about, we'd have Monday night dinners at the parents' house, and Emma and Mum are probably sitting there just like falling asleep, and Dad and I are discussing, what's happened the week before, what's happening this week.
Yeah.
He wouldn't directly say this is what I think you should be doing, but I think it's he'd always give you the right little one-liners or something along the way. I remember, like, perfect example, about 6 weeks out, I've always been a lazy swimmer, and I hadn't been swimming much. He's like, and it was just a line along the lines of like, 6 weeks out, maybe it's time you actually start swimming. And that's it.
That was enough.
And that's enough that you go, yeah, he's right, I better get stuck into it. So not like I didn't specifically have a coach, but certainly he was one person, or he is the one person who helped me all the way up to race day.
How influential is that on the way you coach your athletes now, that, that less is more approach to how to deliver feedback? Is that something you instill with your athletes?
Yes and no. Like, sometimes you've got to know when to like let them work it out themselves in terms of if they're not getting through what they need to. But no, I'm pretty heavy on the feedback, mate, because I feel like for what we try and provide, like as coaches, I think that feedback, whether it's positive or negative, given in the right context, is always going to be beneficial.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is, like, I think Dad was at that point was aware that I had a pretty good grasp of what was going on. So it's not like he doesn't need to.
You didn't need to write the splits down for you.
Yeah, he just knew that, like, and because you had comparative years, and he just knew. So it wasn't needed. Whereas I feel like the people who talk to us or come to us for coaching kind of not necessarily need it, but it's beneficial to give them feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the mix you've got, mate, when you speak about how much they need feedback? You have got a few pros amongst the RPG ranks. What's your current client sheet like in the mixture of, if you've got your everyday athletes like myself all the way up to your pros? What are you working with?
It's probably like, as a coaching like group, where it's probably one of the biggest misconceptions, like that we're only interested in helping or like writing programs for like super high achievers, or like people who want to do it for a living or whatever. Like, me personally, I've got people who have done one or two. I've got a guy who's doing his first triathlon soon. He was a really good cyclist, and I'm helping him get ready for his first try. I've got a few that are like a couple of tries in, like Olympic distance, and then we've got all the way up to people who are like really competitive in the age group ranks. A couple who are pushing towards probably getting pro licenses, and Reedy's the same. He's like from rookies, complete rookies, all the way up to guys who are pushing for world titles in the pro ranks.
That's the amazing thing that I think I was hoping to share, and the one thing I've spoke to everybody back since going up to Port Macquarie and at Cairns, is that I got onto that run leg, and even when I was looking around at the start line, even though I was in the first group going out swimming, I was looking around going, in my head, I've built it up for so many years that to be an Ironman, you have to look like, an absolute action figure. Like, you have to be one of those guys. And I was so surprised to get on the bike leg and onto the run course and look around, and all body shapes and sizes, all different. The scale of athletes was probably geared further towards the 12-hour plus athletes than it was the other way around. And it made it feel more like home. It definitely made it feel way more approachable as a sport, or as something for me to do in the future. Because I'm like, some of these guys are, over 50, 60. Some of these guys are well over 100 kilos, and they're my kind of people. Like, and I'm like, yeah. So from a data point of view, it made it way more approachable. And the amount of people I hear was saying about how you don't realize what you got till it's gone. The amount of people that dismiss an Ironman or a half Ironman. Oh no, I'll in a couple of years when I keep training, I'm like, No, I think you've got the bar set way too high for what it actually takes to do one.
That's something that Reedy and I discuss a fair bit, and it's a bit of a bug, especially with Reed. It's like when people say, "Oh, I'm just doing a sprint distance," "I'm just doing an Olympic." Like those events are just so much more sustainable, long term, and healthy, I guess. Like you can't just keep banging out several Ironmans a year and think that everything else is going to be roses. Like, as you know, like it's a massive sacrifice. So to be able to go and do an Olympic distance race somewhere and be done by 9 o'clock in the morning, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of achievable. There's so many, the amount of club races that we have around us. Australia's pretty lucky with. It's almost like a dark art triathlon. I think people don't realise how often before 9 a.m. these events are happening. I know it. I know.
Yeah.
I didn't realise there was ones in Maroubra in Heffron Park there. I was like, how long have these been here for? Like I've been driving up to Newcastle once a month to race up there. I'm like, they're a cool. They're definitely a cool little gateway drug to get you into.
Okay. Sundays at 6:30. It's done by 7:30, and then everyone's out of bed on a Sunday and going to get their morning coffee and wondering what all the people walking around with their lycra on is.
Sharpie marker on their arm.
Yeah, yes. But yeah, it's mate, it's a lot more sustainable to do the shorter stuff. And so we realize that, and almost you've got, like we always say to people, if everything else in life isn't lined up in terms of like you don't have the right situation with work or with family, or you've got young kids, sometimes it's like maybe now really isn't the time to do an Ironman. Leave it a few years and then attack it when everything else seems to line up a little bit better.
Yeah, that's one of the learnings that I picked up quite early, how important, how special it was to do an Ironman. When I had one of the guys who was like one of my probably biggest role models, or one of my influences that got me into the sport. He is an absolute freak. He reached high standards of racing when he was much younger, and he just for the last 5 or 6 years, he's just never got to the point of his life lining up to allow him to go full tilt at an Ironman. And then when it got to the point where I was training for it, and I was seeing him obviously chase his career and set up his young family, I was like almost humbled. I was like, I'm so lucky to be in a position that my wife, my family, and my career have allowed me to go do this, and it made it that much more special. So, yeah, that is the other little plot twist that we need.
Yeah, mate, you see it all too often, and people can try and chase it when it's not lining up, and it never works as well as they'd hoped.
It hasn't, mate. Excuse me for that weird pause where I'm looking up at my screen. I've just realized I need to upgrade my Zoom. Otherwise, we're going to run out of video, mate. And there's not one person here that's listening to our voices. They're all here for our faces. I'll run that in the background. I've got 2 screens because I'm a high roller like that. Mate, we've moved from, you've won your the Australian champions. I'm getting carried away now. I'm showing off. You won your Australian champs at Port Mac. You head over to Kona. When did Kona become a thing for you? Where that's the topic of the Bottle.It chat at the moment. The Reese heading over. When was Kona on your radar?
When it was very first on my radar, like, mate, I've been getting dragged to triathlon since I was about 5, and back in the day, it was like every town up and down the coast had really big races. Like places like Grafton used to have really big races, and they get people to drive up from Sydney, and they had good prize money. And so obviously Dad would get dragged to races every town up and down the coast every weekend. I shouldn't say dragged because I used to love it. But then he did, I'd be guessing what year, but I probably would have been, I'm going to say 8 or 9 maybe. He did Foster Ironman.
Yeah.
I still remember so much of going to those races and how much I used to love it. And I think he qualified once and then didn't take the spot because it was like, at the time back then, like flights were like, maybe 10 or 12 grand. It was going to be like a huge investment to go to Hawaii. Not that he wouldn't have wanted to go. And then qualified again when I was maybe, I think I was about 12. And I can still remember so many parts of that trip when we first went to Hawaii. Some of the main things were like, so that was the first time, obviously, that it became something personal for me. But like watching, like the one thing that sticks out in my mind is we're staying in town and we drove out the course and we got out to Scenic Lookout, which is about probably 45 Ks from finishing the ride. And pulled in there and Dad was in the passenger seat and we're in a van and I was in the sliding door behind. And I opened the sliding door as he opened the passenger door, and it's basically almost been ripped off the hinges because it was so windy. It like pulled it right back and bent the door, and it was like horribly windy. And it was the prevailing wind there every year is a headwind. So that was like this just crazy amount of wind, and that he would have to be hitting for the next 45K back to town on race day. And I can remember realizing what he got himself into. Yeah. And so I remember that part of the trip, and I remember like where we stayed. I remember some of the people we met, and that was probably, I think I left there. Like the biggest thing I took away from that was like Dad was still working for the local paper at the time. He took long service and like just buried himself with training. Like he just did so much training to the point where he would probably admit now he got it wrong and overtrained. And mate, it was probably the first time I saw him be not invincible.
Yeah,
like that race folded him in half, mate. I can still remember there's a photo of Mum and Dad's house of him coming across the line just ruined. And that's probably when I was like subconsciously it would have been like, well, not that long after I was like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to go and do that one day.
So you saw him obviously had that moment of hesitation when the door opened, and then to see him come across that finish line, you were like, yep, that got him.
Yeah. And the other thing, like, I was like 12 or whatever. And back in the day, they used to have a big Ironman village there, and they had they used to play videos from all the years before, and it was real like the history of the race was really important, and they'd have like a big screen there, and they had Dick and Ricky Hoyt, who was a dad who pushed his son.
Oh yeah.
Swam with him in a dinghy. He had some medical disability, and then rode with him on the bike, sitting on the front like in a wheelchair setup, and then pushed him on the run. And I remember watching it, and they got to the finish line bit of it. I looked across and it was like, my old man's just pouring with tears. I'm like, he doesn't have tear ducts.
Yeah,
like I've never, ever seen him cry. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things on that trip that I still remember. And you're like, I guess that was when it was like, all right, I got to do that one day.
It's got that nostalgic reason of emotion. It's so good when you have emotion attached to something like that.
There certainly was for that place. But yeah, that was where the seed was planted. And I never really got stuck into tries or obsessed with it. I knew I would eventually, like Ironman specifically, but I never really got stuck into it till I was like early 20s.
Yeah, wow. Even though you had that when you were 12.
Yeah, mate, I just used to do all sports at school, and as soon as I got too serious, as soon as coaches wanted commitment and wanted you to ditch golf to come and play basketball or something like that, I was like, nah, I'm good. I just wouldn't mind playing a little bit of everything. And then, yeah, you hit 18 and go and be an 18-year-old for a fair few years, and then you'll be happy with this one. I got to about 100 kilos.
That's cute.
And then, yeah.
Keep going, mate. That's big for you. Is there photos of you at that weight?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're obviously not the ones framed behind you, but they exist.
Asking you shall receive, though. I'll send them through you.
Epic.
But yeah, I guess that was when you start to realize, like, this isn't that much fun. And I always knew. And so one of my good mates kind of said, all right, well, let's let's run Gold Coast half marathon. Because I always ran when I was at school just to get out of school, right? Like you could go and run.
Yep.
And so signed up for Gold Coast half marathon, went and did it, replaced the walking home at 4 a.m. on a Saturday with getting up at 6 a.m. to go running. And then, yeah, the rest is history, mate.
She just snowballed.
It really did.
Was it ever, I was about to say, was it ever going to be one and done, or did you knew that, was that coming, it was like a homecoming? Did you knew you were always going to end back there?
Oh, no, because I ran that half marathon, and then a few of my, the next year, more of my mates started, and it was very quickly then started doing tries again. And obviously Dad had several bikes in his garage, so you grab one, start going riding with him, and realize that it's fun. And then it's, you do an Olympic distance, and back to what we're saying before, with like life kind of allowed me to do as much training as I wanted to. And so I steadily, rapidly got sucked into the Ironman vortex.
And what a beautiful vortex it is. What's your favorite? I've just dropped studio lighting, mate. This is what Ali sees most nights. I don't know why she's still with me.
You look a lot better.
I look better in black and white as well, in dark, mate. What's your favorite Ironman memory? Let's stick with Port Macquarie, because that's obviously where we met. And what's your favorite? Is it that race? Is it the race where you took home that you got over the line first, or is there something more? Is there something recently? What's answer the question for me while I recover lighting?
I would say, oddly, probably the feeling of my first, like, I remember, because when I did my first Ironman, I won an entry. I'd done 170.3.
Dad's paper comp that you won, was it? That's a bit.
It was, mate, it was 25 words or less. What would you do on holidays in Camden Haven? I'd never been there, and obviously being having a little bit of a way with words, I guess. I came up with something, and I just got an email. I think I had 5 weeks to train, and I remember like sending Dad I sent Dad the email, and I think I got the email and just swore about 100 times, staring at the screen, thinking, what have I done? But looking back, it was probably the best way to do it, because although not getting nervous or not worrying about like other people or anything, you still want to do the best you can, right? And so like I knew that your first Ironman's always going to be real nerve-wracking, because you put a lot of pressure on yourself against the unknown, where that one I was kind of like, all right, well, I got 5 weeks. I'm going to go and learn as much as I can, and then I'll probably do one next year properly. And so the feeling of like 10K to go in the run, because I just wasn't like hard, like I hadn't done enough running. Like my legs weren't like battle hard. Mate, I felt like I was running at 400 meter max effort. I remember vividly just trying so hard, and my watch went off, and it was a 5:27 kilometer. And I'm just like,
what's happening?
And that's probably one of my favorite memories from down there, that you just like, but that course, mate, there's a lot of good memories just because of the way that course is laid out, right? It's just a different vibe to most other places.
Well, that's what I couldn't get my head around, and I'm interested in talking about Kona with you on this. So doing Port Macquarie, I just presumed that was the normal. I knew it was kind of special, and I knew the way the towns are set out, that obviously they have pockets of people in Laurelton, Cat Eye, like you're never more than 10 Ks away from your next little cheer or support crew.
Yep.
That's always really nice. And then when we went up to Cairns, I'm like, so we don't see you while you go to Port Douglas? And they're like, no, we're just on the road. Then you were saying, before this, that Kona's like even worse again. You stay in town and everyone just pisses off for a couple of hours, then comes back. Like, it's special.
Odd.
What do you do if that's your highlight? I kind of got lost of words here. I was looking for a segue into if what makes racing so important is to having that support and people. How much of a mindfuck is it going to Kona and then realizing that you're on your Pat Malone?
Very much so. I think like you can get fit and like, but if you're not mentally ready for the hard periods or haven't visualized things in your head, any race really, when it goes pear-shaped, it can just be easy to panic, I guess. Whereas port, I guess the best way to put it is port, you've always got something to look forward to. Like in terms of you get out of the water, you get the weir's coming up. You go over the weir, cool, you go over it again, you come out, Laurelton, as you say, and then the run, you're always running into, like, it'd be like, oh, Bo should be coming soon because he's running the other way. And then, my family's going to be up here and the finish line's there, I'll be there next lap, that kind of thing. You've always got mental stimulation. Where Hawaii, you get in the water and you swim 1.9 Ks away from where you start, you go around a boat and you turn around and swim straight back. So you don't have anything. It's not one of those things where you go, I know there's a green marker up here that I've got to turn left to go to the weir. Like if we're talking about Port Macquarie or the squares at Cairns or whatever it is, at Hawaii, it's just like a drag race out. You go around a boat and drag race back. Then onto the bike, kind of similar. You do about 10 Ks in town, and then you go up a hill and you just out the highway, do a U-turn, back to town. And so yet again, with the run over there, you do 12 Ks in town. So you go along Alihi Drive, pretty hot, not much wind because you're in behind buildings. Like there's a lot of support there, which in a way is a bad thing because the hype, you're just like, I'm killing it. Like, and you get out and even the most, like, you can be so experienced and be so ready for it, you still just get hyped up by having all the people around. And you run the first, so many people run the first 12 Ks too hard. And then you go up Palani, which is just a big, long drag uphill, where it's getting more and more Tour de France-esque, where like people are like giving it to you and telling you how good you're going, and your heart rate goes sky high, and you're probably an hour into the run, and then you turn left onto the Queen K, and you run 15K away from town, turn around and come back, and then you're finished.
And there's no one.
So it's horribly lonely. if you're not used to the voices in your head and you're not winning those battles, it can be a real long day. You don't have that thing where, I mean, later on in the run at the far turn, you'll obviously see the pros coming the other way and you've got a little bit of mental stimulation, but it's just completely different to Port or to Cairns, where you've got looped, good vibes. You know, people telling you you're doing amazing when you're not.
That's probably the reason why I haven't spoken about this obviously on the podcast, but that's probably a good reason. That's one of the reasons why I won't do Kona. You know, I've made that decision that I wouldn't race there.
Yeah,
even if I got
that's
reason. I need the support.
It's probably one of the reasons you won't do Kona, but but yeah, it's that's how it's. That is why Port and Cairns as well are such good courses, and one of the very many reasons why Hawaii is tough. There's a lot of there's a lot of other reasons that Hawaii is considerably harder, but that would be one of the things that people they underestimate.
Yeah, well, you would, because if you like myself, say for example, I'd qualify for Kona, I'd be going over there expecting a carbon copy of Port. So I went to Cairns and I watched Cairns, and Cairns was pretty much a carbon copy of Port with support and the race layout. The next minute you rock up at Kona, if I got out in the course, it'd be a struggle. And especially if things go pear-shaped, because I mean, we've discussed it before. Like when people ask, like the margin for error over there is like you can make slight mistakes at Port or at Cairns, even where like you might not hydrate as well as you should for an hour, or you might eat a little too little, or go a little bit too hard for a period. But I think that the margin for error over there is a lot less, and so not forgiving.
Yeah, that's where, I guess that's where we try, and that's what we're there for, right? That's what the coaches are there for. It's not only to anyone can get you fit, or you can go online and probably buy a decent program, and if you're very motivated and can hold yourself accountable, you can probably get yourself pretty fit for that race. Yeah. But knowing the ins and outs, knowing where people go wrong, knowing where probably, and in our case, Reedy and I have probably gone wrong over there, you can help people
avoid that,
be way more prepared to not self-implode.
Are you this is your first year going over to Kona as a coach?
Yeah. I had a guy in 2019 who I trained a lot with, but also wrote his program into the race then. But it's the first time where it's like
you're responsible for some athletes.
Yeah. And you feel like, and that's the best word to describe it. You do feel responsible for you feel like you spend so much time learning. Like I've spent 6 months on the Big Island over the years, like in total. So like you know a lot of the place, and you feel like giving them the information that you've learned is one of the main things that the main way that you can be beneficial to their day. It's not only the training the whole way through, it's the little things along the way that no one would tell them.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting dynamic, like just speaking of yourself over the last couple of months and speaking to a few other coaches about the difference between the coach and the not coach, because us boys heading up the port, there was 5 of us. We weren't coached. We just kind of, as you said, we cut pasted the program from online, and between us we had a rough idea, and we were happily Googling things, and we knew a couple of things. Like obviously a few of us had backgrounds in those areas, and yeah, we did the best we could. But like you said, once you start getting to that pointy end of performance, and once we could have alleviated a lot of head noise or a lot of doubt, I think, with a coach. And that's something that we look forward to. The Bottle.It team or the Bottle.It, however that looks in the future, we'll be definitely exploring a bit more.
It's one of those things, mate, that a lot of the time it's not what to do, it's what not to do, and having the confidence not to do. Yeah. If you're, we're all, as you say, when you get into the performance end, or anyone who's doing Ironman, like it's a big strain, right? So like sometimes you just need someone who you've got confidence in to have that conversation with of, I'm tired. And it's like, well, what's going on? And then and some athletes is exactly the opposite, mate. You ring and I'll say, how you going? No, I'm good. How you going? Oh, yeah, I haven't been getting much sleep. I'm like, yeah, yeah. And it's like, yeah. So it's having someone to bounce your feelings, I guess, off, to make sure that you're getting to the start line as healthy as you can. Because I think, as you say, self-coached, there's a lot of mistakes you see, but I think that a lot of the time self-coached athletes are too motivated at the wrong times, if that makes sense. Like they sign up for these events, like I said earlier, about being pretty unfit in January, but you see it locally. You see Strava or whatever, where guys who have signed up, or you see it on the socials, and it's like hashtag 20 weeks till Kona, and I'm just like, 20 weeks, like that's half a year, and you're already out nailing 6-hour rides, then all of a sudden 8 weeks out, when it's like you really should be starting to get those good vibes and not be completely fatigued and get through your work, they're useless, and they're trying to manage injury or something like that. So,
mate, what does the future hold for you? Obviously Kona, the big picture future. You said you're going to race next year.
Yeah, I'd like to go. I'd like to do Hawaii again, but like with no expectations, and semi-enjoy it. Although I've enjoyed both times, it'd just be good to go and, I don't know, kind of implement what you've spent, or like what I've spent all my time learning, and see how well I can go over there. I wonder if Reedy and I are just going to
have another 25 word or less comp that you could snag 5 weeks out.
I'll say, mate, that's the whole reason I'm going this year, is just to try and weasel my way into not having to do another Ironman. I'll just do it next year. But mate, what's the future hold? Like, we're just going to keep building RPG to something that we want people to be involved with. And that comes about by, like, there's nothing better than getting word of mouth referrals. So just building the business and making it something that is not only about like performing or doing as well as you can with the time you have, or however we go about it, but also feeling like when you go to races, it's not just an individual sport. It's like you get to go to, say, Sunshine Coast and catch up with everyone. So so next couple of years, mate, that's kind of work related. That's what we'll be doing, just trying to steadily build without going crazy and losing the sight of what we're trying to achieve.
Mate, that's unreal. That's unreal. I enjoyed you sharing that you went from 100 kilos to, I think that's probably the highlight of my show. It makes it a lot more relatable to know that you've gone from big boys down to where you are.
I'll send you some photos. It's I think we all get there, right? You all go through ebbs and flows in life, and it was
it would have been a good time. Like, it would have been a good time. You don't get to 100.
Well,
kilos,
to give it some context, I was going to the gym a fair bit, and I probably got to mid-80s, and then tore my quad in half playing Oz tag. Like, got kneed, and it literally split like that.
Oh.
And rehab was butter chicken and Jack Daniels.
Yeah, together.
And it just, clearly. and then it just escalated. And so, but I mean, at some point you go, I'm going to do something about this. And
how much is probably a good time to not only, I was going to say wrap it up, but to factor in some Bottle.It chat here. How you talk about being on your own in those dark places. How much did you call on any mental strength you'd learned from endurance sports to get through that injury? Like, what do you do for your mental health? Is it something you actively manage, or are you on top of that?
I wouldn't say then I would have been, because it was just like, I think when you're young, it's a bit of like ignorance is bliss, right? Like, you're not very aware of your own, like your own, or like mental or physical, really. But then sometimes it's just like, I guess that situation specifically then was, I can't think of like Matt, my mate, who I started running with again, but like, I don't know where he was at the time, but I was like, it was probably just a chat of like, all right, let's get running again. And so, like, obviously relying on a friend, and then next year, another one of our friends did the same thing. And so I guess, relying on your friends at that time. And I guess now I would say, like, I'm very aware of like the things that, as you get, I guess, with the work that I do, but also like just getting older, and I guess for lack of, I guess you say, wiser, it's just knowing the things that kind of trigger you, I guess, or make you not feel great. And then also realizing when you're making shitty decisions, what you've got to do
to get back,
to fix that. Like, for me personally, I'd say that probably the worst thing that I can do if I'm feeling not great would be drink.
Yeah.
And I that's like, that goes for everyone, right? Like most people, but me personally, like, it turns me into just, I'm emotionally useless. I see the negative in everything. I can't process things logically, or like, if I've got an issue with something, I'll just like, right, what are the steps I need to do to rectify this? And whether it be good or bad, I'll put those steps in place and then achieve it, and then do what I need to make it happen. But whereas I just can't do that if I'm
on the team,
if I've been having beers, and so like, that's one thing that I've always been aware of. And also, I guess with mental health stuff, like, I'd say I'm very good with it. But when it gets to a point, if I've had specific circumstances where I've done exactly what I just said, where it's like, this is where I need to get to fix the issue. And if one of the steps along that way involves me not being able to, like if it's I don't know, like a situation that I can't control, then that's something that I've always really battled with. So I'd say I'm very aware of the mental health side of things, and it's something that you deal with a lot when you're dealing with athletes and the emotional roller coaster of racing and achieving and also not achieving when things go poor.
I think there's a lot in that, in the fact that you know, it's one thing to identify your triggers, but you've identified a lifestyle that's, you know, not very productive to that mood set and that mindset. I think that's a lot of people know that things are going rough and decisions are starting to not go their way. And there's a few reasons why that. And most people kind of turn to the counterproductive lifestyle to balance that out. It's like, oh, you know what, crack, fuck it, we'll just drink to forget. And then that just continues to happen each week. So I think there's a real big takeaway in the fact that you're like, actually, before I can have a tin to enjoy, you know, things going my way, let's get things going my way. So it's not a counterproductive behavior.
Very much so. And it's like, I find like having one beer, you go, awesome. Then, you know, maybe next time you go, well, two's good. Like if one made me feel good, and I know, especially in the wrong circumstances, you can very quickly make shitty decisions that then snowball the effect. So yeah, you're right. I certainly knowing what's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do is probably the best way for me to stay positive.
Yeah, for sure. That's great chat, mate. And we've kept this out of the gutter for 51 minutes.
Let's we'll push stop and then we'll take it to the gutter, because we'll keep it PG.
We'll go again, mate. It'd be good to see it. We'll do an up late, like Big Brother up late podcast chat, mate.
Maybe Hawaii.
Yeah,
we're over there.
Yes. I will have the equipment with me on the beach, mate, at 2 a.m. I reckon.
There has been podcasts done in the past over there that got well out of hand from triathlon, drunk ex-pro triathletes that I reckon you get some hits. So
yeah, nice. There's one thing the triathlon community love, and that's supporting somebody have a meltdown post race, during the race. You know, it's good content.
Go, buddy. Go for broke.
Yeah, okay, for sure, mate. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
Yeah, we'll see you over in Kona. We'll do it again. We'll do all this again. And Kevin might get a sideline eye from the RPG crew during the race.
Mate, I can't wait. It's gonna be a hectic week or so. And anyone who says to us, you get to go over for a holiday and watch the race, like I don't know if you'd enjoy being in Reedy or my shoes, but mate, we'll enjoy the parts we can. It's gonna be full on, and we're gonna need a break when we get home. But I really look forward to it. It's gonna be so much fun.
I really hope Emma listened to that.
Just take that grab and put that up for me, can you?
I'll do that. That'll be the title. Good man.
Been a pleasure.
Sweet. That's done. We're done.
Beautiful.
That was very
really